a mad Uchiha. The only thought was destruction, and destruction was what the Biju dished out. Konoha had never seen such tragedy occurring right in its front yard since its founding, but 7 years ago, the worst happened. The spoiled child that has always had someone with big weapons and a large shield to protect it was finally beat up, by the one being that couldn't be killed. In its early years, Konoha always had the likes of the Shodai Hokage, a revered god of shinobi, the Nadaime, the god of water, and the Sandaime, the professor, the god of shinobi, the Yondaime as well, hailed as Konoha's yellow flash. With its first beating, Konoha learned to hate, and they'd held on to their hatred for years, and it didn't seem as if they were going to let go any time soon. The world had turned against the Yondaime's wishes. Instead of celebrating in joy with a hero, Konoha labored in hatred, troubled with thoughts of vengeance, yet powerless to do anything. They probably weren't like, who cares what a dead man thinks? The Yondaime Hokage is dead, he couldn't feel what they felt. In all his life, Naruto has known that Konoha hates him. Aside from the love his mother gave him, the other feeling he had learned to know was hatred. He saw it every day of his life, he saw it in his bloody nightmares, he saw it in the eyes of the ignorant fools that crawled around the village streets on a daily basis. He didn't think or believe for a second that such a hateful village could ever learn to love, all it knew was hatred. For the past 7 years Naruto has been dodging bullets of death glares and fangs of curses that have been constantly thrown at him. Each time he took a walk around the village, his presence only managed to attract the worst things that lurked behind the shadows to walk into daylight. If there were vampires in Konoha, they would walk through the sunny streets just to murder him with the glares if he chose to entertain them, by parading himself while he dances to the beat of the hatred. Life has not been easy for him. He has been forced to be an adult, he was forced to grow up, understand things at a tender age, all because of one decision one foolish person made. Minato had cursed both him and his mother's life by choosing to make him a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and then die. His mother always tells him the story on his birthday, the story of the day he was born, the story of a nine-tailed mountain-tall furball wreaking havoc in the village. It was some cursed fate that the day he was born, that masked fool chose to rip the Kyuubi out of his mother and force it to attack Konoha. Naturally, being Konoha's leader, his stupid father chose to stuff the Biju in his gut, the day he was born. Worst of all, he pathetically died, leaving him to carry the burden with his poor mother, the only person he truly loves. No one cared who he
Oh
was
no,
related
I'm
to, as
not.
long as he was
No.
Uzumaki Naruto, Kushina's son and the Jinchuriki.
Yeah, I'm not enjoying that. See what else? Trained by Hashirama. No. Naruto was a prodigy. We need stories. We don't need. But if Naruto was abandoned by. Nope. Wish there was a part two to that one, but there is not. But if Naruto was secretly overpowered? No. I like to hear him work up to him. But if Naruto inherited full power, Kurama, nope. Probably a good story, I'm not gonna lie, but you know. was interesting. Louis Genius Part 1. That was 2 weeks ago. I think I already heard that one. True potential. Naruto was full blooded. Uchiha. I don't truly care about the Renegon. Oh, come on. Back in time. No. Lots of sorts. Absolute genius. Says. No, no. Well, they're just mixing in other animes to this. No, 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 dear Lord, no.
Hello there, and welcome back to another video. This is the first episode of a story about Naruto Uzumaki when he was a mess of opposing fronts and thoughts. He was obnoxious and ignorant, yet bashful and bright. He was always cheerful and smiling, but he sobbed in his room. What will happen when he attracts the attention of Kandi Zaviki as well as his two new teammates? Will they be able to decipher Naruto's intricate web of disguises? Wait and see. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel when you've finished watching. Let's begin by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Let's get this party started. Naruto Uzumaki, a short blonde.
This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Neglected Naruto Was a Generational Genius. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe.
She said. The others remained silent as they watched the fox easily toss the village's shinobi away as they attempted to push the Kyuubi away. When it appeared that the Nine Tails would charge forward, a huge, long staff struck it in the stomach and began to gradually push the fox out of the village. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, was standing atop one of the buildings when the fox turned to see where it had come from. As the younger generation grinned at the appearance of the formidable leaf shinobi, Naruto managed to say, "Gigi," while watching his grandfather-like figure engage the Kyuubi. Naruto saw two powerful energy signatures emerge close by and land right next to the third Hokage as he watched him fight the Kyuubi with long-range assistance from some of the other leaf shinobi. But when Naruto recognized the signatures, he grinned. As the Kurenai, Kakashi, Asuma, and Guy stared at him in bewilderment, unsure of what he was talking about, he declared, "Pervy Sage and Ba-chan are here." When they did, two huge plumes of smoke materialized in front of the Kyuubi, revealing a large purple frog holding a shield and Sasamata in its hands, as well as a large white slug with blue stripes running down its back. The leaf villages of Sanin, Jiraiya and Tsunade were perched atop their heads. The four younger shinobi turned to Naruto in shock as they witnessed Jiraiya and Tsunade start fighting the Kyuubi. They all thought, how did he know they were there? I did not even sense them, but decided to put it out of their minds for the time being and return to it later. Sarutobi said, a little breathless, Jiraiya-kun, Tsunade-chan, as the two Sanin nodded in his direction. Sensei. If the Kyuubi is here, I can only guess something went wrong with Kushina's while she was in labor? Jiraiya responded. He stole his voice as they both nodded. That seems to be the case. Though I have not seen her or Minato yet, I don't know where they are, but we have to keep the Kyuubi away. No matter what, he said. Everything abruptly fell silent as the fox was about to attack them. Minato then materialized above the Kyuubi's head, appearing somewhat battered, and vanished with the Kyuubi in a yellow flash away from the village. Tsunade inquired, where did they go? As they started looking around before spotting a big explosion a few miles outside the village. Jiraiya said, there, and then the summons followed as the three cage-level shinobi started to run as quickly as they could in the direction of the location. Even though only 4 and a young boy knew it wasn't quite over, The other shinobi cheered as the fourth Hokage and Naruto's father disappeared with the Kyuubi. Shutting his eyes, Naruto looked around for his father. He had always been able to sense people's whereabouts, but he had never mentioned this to anyone. Like the back of his hand, he recognized his parents' signatures. He located them outside the village after a minute of looking, but he could feel his mother was in pain. He felt compelled to approach her and prevent the Kyuubi from causing her harm. He leapt out of Kurenai's embrace and began to run, but Kakashi and Kurenai caught him. Kakashi pleaded, "Naruto, you mustn't. Just because the Kyuubi is not there does not mean it is still dangerous." But the little blonde resisted as Kurenai held him, despite his wriggling, gently against her chest. "But I have two. Chan is hurt, I know it. She is with San and the Kyuubi." The others' eyes widened at that point. Since they knew the Hokage must have teleported the Kyuubi a considerable distance from the village, they asked themselves, he can sense that far away? Naruto appeared to have a very wide range of human senses. Kurenai nodded when Asuma said, "Definitely need to look into that on a later date, as having that kind of sensing ability sounded like a true boon." Kurenai remarked, "Have faith, Naru-chan. They will be okay," as Naruto gazed out over the village with his violet eyes. Sight of the battle as several chakra chains were launched from Kushina's back, holding the Kyuubi in place while Gamabunta, the chief toad, was on its back doing his best to keep it pinned down. Kushina took a deep breath. Minato abruptly flashed in front of her a few moments later. He held their newborn daughter, one of the lovely twins his wife had just given birth to. She willed herself to stay awake despite the pain radiating throughout her body from the tearing of the Kyuubi. She couldn't fail the village and her family. "I'm sorry, Kushina, but this is the only way," he said gravely. "You will perish if we seal the beast back into you, and I cannot allow that to occur. I can't allow Naruto and the twins to live without their mother." A newborn baby was the best option to seal the beast away in, but Kushina did not like it, but she knew it had to be done. It broke her heart to make her children bear such a burden, which she never wanted any of her children to bear. "What will we do to seal it?" Kushina asked, feeling the Kyuubi struggling against her chakra chains as she attempted to stand up. Despite her expertise in Fuinjutsu, she knew there would be a struggle because the Kyuubi probably did not want to return to be sealed away again, and there were only a few sealing techniques that could contain the nine-tailed fox. "I've got a strategy for that. I sense that Sarutobi, Tsunade, and Jiraiya-sensei are en route to this location. We will use the four-corner sealing technique when they arrive. I'll use the 8 trigrams to seal it away once we've trapped it." Minato, the four-corner sealing method was intended to keep the Biju up to the 6 tails, but it might not work. Since they only had one chance at this, Kushina expressed concern that the Kyuubi might be too strong for it. "I understand, but it's possible if there are 5 cage-level shinobi present and 4 to carry out the ritual. Although it will be difficult, it is possible."
Shit.
Although it was not the best plan, Kushina bit her lip, hoping that the 4-corner barrier seal would be sufficient. The 8 trigrams would definitely hold the Kyuubi. Gamabunta yelled, "Incoming," as the Kyuubi unchained one of its claws and charged at them. He roared, "I will not be sealed away again," indicating that the infant Mito was his target. "No," exclaimed Minato and Kushina as they leapt to shield their daughter from danger. As they waited for the blow to come, they were struck from behind by a huge shockwave, and they turned to see Gamaken using his shield to block the Kyuubi claw. 3 voices called out, Minato, and Hiruzen, Tsunade, and Jiraiya emerged next to them. Gamabunta and Gamaken held the Kyuubi in place while Tsunade started to heal Kushina while Minato told them all about the plan. Although they did not enjoy it, the 3 recently arrived adults looked down at the baby girl with sadness, knowing that she would inevitably face difficult times in her life. "Is Naru-chan doing okay? Does anyone know?" Considering her eldest and firstborn, Kushina inquired. "Last I checked, he was in the protective barrier being looked after by Kakashi, Asuma, Guy, and Kurenai," she said. Observing Hiruzen nod his head, "He is not hurt and is safe." Knowing that her Naruto was safe and had escaped the fox's rampage, Kushina nodded and felt a little more at ease. While the other 4 took the 4 points around the Kyuubi to start the sealing, Hiruzen stood in front of the Kyuubi with the intention of assisting in keeping the Kyuubi at bay while Tsunade healed Kushina's body sufficiently for her to move and access her chakra. He put his hand on the ground from Minato's position, called forth a small altar, and lightly laid his newborn daughter on top of it. She was asleep, which startled him because of all the noise, but he assumed that was for the best. He then started drawing the required symbols in blood around the baby and on the baby girl's stomach. The seal was ready in a moment. Everyone, "It's time now," Minato said as Kushina pulled her chains back, causing the nine-tailed fox to roar out of its position. The Nine Tails was the strongest of the tailed beasts for a reason, and Sarutobi, Gomaken, and Gamabunta tried their hardest to contain it, but it was rapidly escaping their control. As he, Kushina, Jiraiya, and Tsunade prepared, channeled their chakras, and created the required hand seals, Minato nodded to everyone. The four of them yelled, "Dog, Snake, Boar, Tiger, Four-Corner Sealing Jutsu," as their blue chakra exploded all around them and started to form a huge net that grew until it was large enough to enclose the Kyuubi. They each held kunai, which they would drive into the ground and hold the Kyuubi in the sealing barrier once the net was firmly in place around the Kyuubi. As the sealing barrier started to enclose the Kyuubi and wrap around him, Gomaken, Gamabunta, and Sarutobi saw the sealing jutsu activate and immediately leapt out of the way. It screamed, "No, I will not be sealed again," after just getting free, as it struggled against the sealing barrier surrounding it, forcing the 4-cage-level shinobi to grit their teeth and forcing Kushina, who had previously been in pain from form, to fight for him by fainting. "Continue." The others nodded and gritted their teeth as they all poured out more chakra in response to Minato's statement, "We need to use more chakra." Hiruzen extended his adamantine staff and struck the Kyuubi squarely in the nose, causing it to twitch in surprise as it attempted to move. Despite the Kyuubi's constant struggles, Gamabunta and Gomaken came alongside it and slammed into its sides, frightening it with their enormous bodies. Gamabunta said, "Take that, you giant furball," as the net of seals started to envelop the Kyuubi's entire giant form, even though it had declared that it would not be sealed into a brat. Sarutobi stood in front of the Kyuubi, staring it in the red eyes, knowing that the sealing was about to be finished. Even when the Kyuubi turned to face him, he did not show any signs of fear. He uttered the words, "You are too dangerous to be allowed to roam around freely," which caused the Kyuubi to widen their eyes in response to Sarutobi's statement. When the enormous fox demon was being pinned to the ground, Hashirama Senju was standing in front of the Kyuubi. Huge wooden roots were emerging from the ground, encircling the Kyuubi and holding it in submission. "You are too dangerous to be allowed to roam freely," the first Hokage said, gazing into the Kyuubi's eyes with a dejected yet resolute expression. "I'm sorry, but this has to be done to keep the village and the world safe." As the Kyuubi started to struggle against the net of seals, a snarl tore from its mouth, causing the four sealers to struggle for a moment, but the net had already completely encased the Kyuubi. After indicating that she was finished, Kushina drove her kunai into the ground, followed by Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Minato. The Kyuubi roared, "No," and Minato hurled one of his three-pronged kunai at its head, scattering an 8-trigram seal on top of it. Before applying the required hand seals, Minato cast a sorrowful and contrite glance down at his daughter. He yelled, 8-trigram seal, as the kanji and blood marking he had previously created started to transfer onto the baby's stomach and form a spiral with 8 symbols surrounding Ida 4 at the top and 4 at the bottom. The 8-trigram seal appeared on the Kyuubi's stomach before it simply transformed into a cluster of chakra. The Kyuubi's body changed in a giant shroud of orange chakra as it continued to attempt to break out of the 4-corner sealing barrier. With a final roar that seemed to reverberate and surpass the others, the Kyuubi started to be drawn into the 8-trigram seal on Mito's stomach. Eventually, the Kyuubi disappeared entirely, leaving only the 5 shinobi and a baby in the vicinity. When it was all over, there was only silence as everyone stared at the baby solemnly, thinking about how unfair it was that she had to bear such a heavy burden just an hour after her birth. "Mito," Kushina muttered as she approached her daughter, but the weight of the sealing and obtaining the Kyuubi eventually caught up with her, causing her to stumble and fall to the ground due to sheer exhaustion. Tsunade held the young girl in her arms and watched as Minato yelled, "Kushina," before running to his wife. Minato held her tenderly in his lap, a worried expression on his face as the four materialized around her. Tsunade checked her breathing and pulse, but she smiled and exhaled easily, saying, "She will be fine. She is simply worn out, which I don't find surprising considering what she has endured today. Let us transport them both to the medical facility. To be safe, I have a few Chunin bodyguards in addition to the nurses who are caring for Eiji." As Tsunade nodded, Minato added, "And we have a private room set up for her which we were going to transfer her to once the twins were born. Make sure to put her to bed right away after flashing her there. Her Uzumaki blood will take care of the rest, but she will be weak for a few days." As he picked Kushina up in bridal style, Minato nodded in agreement. "And take me with you so that I can check on the other bay," she said. Minato was about to leave when he turned to face Sarutobi with a pained expression on his face and said, "Sarutobi, I am sorry I could not protect Bawako. in an attempt to express his sympathies to the elder Hokage. The third's face took on a sorrowful expression as he silently lamented his wife's passing, but he knew that this would have to wait until later, so for the time being he simply thanked Minato and gave Jiraiya a shoulder pat. This time, Minato was about to flash when Tsunade, Mito still in her arms, grabbed his sleeve, but he had another idea. Naruto. Naruto will have to be picked up by someone. I can do that, Hiruzen said before Jiraiya could offer to get him, since he will undoubtedly want to make sure his family is safe. I will take him to the hospital. Kushina, Tsunade, and Mito vanished in a flash of yellow after Minato nodded his gratitude. Sarutobi and Jiraiya left for the village, no longer needing to remain there. In the village, what's going on? As the barrier preventing them from leaving vanished and some of the Chunin and Jonin who had fought the Kyuubi emerged in front of them, Naruto asked for Kurenai's arms. The younger generation cheered, with the exception of young Naruto, who was only interested in finding his Ka, Chan and 2-San. They described how the Kyuubi was defeated, but they never specified how. The young child Naruto heard Sarutobi approaching him as he glanced over from all the commotion around him. Gigi. Naruto sobbed as he leapt from Kurenai's arms and into the elderly Hokage's embrace. Where are 2-San and Ka, Chan? Are they all right? His eyes threatened to well up again as he asked. Although Sarutobi did his best to calm and soothe him, he knew the boy wanted to see his parents. They are fine, Naruto. They are at the hospital with Tsunade, Jiraiya and your baby brother and sister. When Naruto heard brother and sister, his eyes widened a bit, which only increased his desire to arrive sooner. As Naruto nodded his head rapidly, he said, your mother will probably be asleep, so remember to be quiet when we get there since today has been very taxing for her. Sarutobi swiftly left for the hospital after saying goodbye and thanking Kurenai, Asuma, Guy, and Kakashi for taking care of him during this difficult time. It didn't take him long, but when he finally arrived at the hospital, everything was hurried as stretchers carrying patients were brought in, and some nurses were tending to the injured in the hallways or lobbies. He saw Shizune, Tsunade's apprentice, helping a young Kunoichi and ordering a few nurses, demonstrating the rapid progress of her studies with Tsunade. Gigi, will all of these people be alright? Naruto inquired as he observed all of the injured shinobi. They will eventually. Many people were injured as a result of their fierce battle tonight, but they will quickly get back on their feet thanks to Tsunade and some of the best doctors in Konoha, he said, and Naruto nodded. Before they reached the prenatal zone, they ascended several flights of stairs. Naruto noticed several pregnant women nearby who had been admitted to the hospital to check on their unborn children, including his mother's friend Hitomi Hyuga, who, as far as he knew, was expecting a young girl. Sarutobi led them out of that small space and down a silent hallway, coming to a halt at the third on the right. Sarutobi said, here we go, and Naruto opened the door and entered. He saw his father, Jiraiya, and Tsunade in the corner of the room, talking solemnly, and he noticed that they were all looking exhausted, especially Minato, whose clothes were torn in a few places. He rubbed his eyes a little. 2-San, Naruto called softly, recalling Sarutobi's comment that he should keep quiet, and he noticed Minato turn to face him with a smile. After saying, Naru-chan, he walked out of the corner and picked up his son from Sarutobi. 2-San, I missed you. As his father held him close and tried to comfort him, Naruto started to cry and said, I thought you and Ka-chan were hurt. Naru-chan, don't worry. Together, your Ka-chan and I are quite powerful. He tried to make his son smile, but all he did was sob more intensely. It will take more than that overgrown fuzzball to hurt us, he said. Hey Naruto-chan, would you like to see your new baby brother and sister? He asked, forcing Naruto to look at him in an attempt to soothe his son. Minato grinned and escorted Naruto to the opposite side of the room, while Naruto's eyes widened slightly but he nodded his head. Ka-chan, Naruto said, turning to face Kushina, who was dozing on the bed with her red hair swept to one side. Naruto, she's all right. She just needs some rest after a long and exhausting night. As they arrived at their destination, Minato remarked, I know she was very worried about you, but I know she will be very happy to see you in the morning. Next to Kushina's bed was a cot with two small bundles sleeping soundly inside, one wrapped in a blue blanket and the other in blue. The boy had blonde hair with a faint red streak in it, and his skin was tanned like Naruto and Minato's. The young girl's skin was a lighter shade than Kushina's, but she had hair similar to her twin. Naruto saw that the little girl had whisker-like marks on her cheeks, which were more distinct and noticeable than those on his younger brother. With Naruto still in his arms, Minato leaned down and said, "Naru-chan, I would like you to meet your brother and sister Eiji and Mito Uzumaki Namikaze." The twins were sleeping. With a slight gasp, Naruto turned to face his younger siblings and reached out with his right hand to caress his sister's cheek. "Mito-chan," he said, a smile spreading across his face. Considering that the twins' birth, which should have been a happy occasion, was cut short by a madman and the attack, Minato, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Sarutobi grinned as they watched Naruto interact with his two new siblings. It was nice to see something positive happen after such a long day and all the tragic events that had transpired. He repeated the action with Eiji, laughing when the infant wrinkled his nose. "May I hold them, 2-san?" Gazing directly into his father's eyes, Naruto asked. "Okay, but one at a time," Minato said, grinning and nodding as he set Naruto down and the boy took a seat next to him. Minato picked up Mito and walked over to Naruto. Tsunade and Jiraiya sat next to him, staring down at the young girl. "Remember to be careful of her head," he said to his oldest son, who nodded and gently placed her in Naruto's arm. She rested in Naruto's arms, but since he was only 5, she also lay across his lap. Her small body was against his. As Minato watched him with Eiji curled up in his arms, Naruto said, "Hi Mito-chan, I'm your big brother," which caused the others to smile. Mito's eyes flickered as he was speaking, and then she opened them to see a pair of blue eyes staring up at him. He said, "She has your eyes 2-san," as he glanced up at his father, who was now slightly ahead of him. He remarked, "It seems she does, and it looks like Eiji has the same eyes too," indicating that Eiji was now awake as well and that his eyes were similar to his. When Naruto looked down at his sister, he noticed that she was staring up at him with a puzzled expression, as though she was trying to figure out who he was. After the two appeared to be competing with each other in staring, Mito burst out laughing with a quiet, melodic laugh that made everyone happy. Minato remarked, "I think she likes you Naru-chan," with a hint of laughter. When a weary voice asked, "What's not to like about my little Naru-chan?" they turned to see Kushina smiling and gazing at the scene with her eyes open. "Kushina," the adults all exclaimed, astonished to see her awake, as Naruto turned to face his mother and a fresh batch of tears started to well up. He handed Mito to Tsunade, who gladly took the young girl, and then he headed over to Kushina. He said, "Ka-chan," and climbed onto her bed to lie beside her. "Naru-chan, stop crying. Everything is fine," she said gently, but he was soon embracing her as she put her arms around him and kissed the top of his head. "Ka-chan, I thought you were hurt." As Kushina tried to soothe her by rubbing his back in soothing circles, he sobbed, "I was worried." His statement, "I felt you and 2-san and you felt hurt with the big vile horrible chakra nearby," attracted everyone's attention. "What do you mean, Naruto? You felt everyone?" With a curious expression on his face, Minato asked, glancing at his son. "I'm not sure how to explain it. I had a sense of everyone's location. I sensed that you and Ka-chan were not in the village when Pervy Sage and Ba-chan appeared on their large animals. The question, Naru-chan, can describe what you felt when you sensed your parents," piqued Sarutobi's interest. "Well, I sensed that 2-san was at ease but also anxious and a little afraid. Though exhausted and irritated, Ka-chan felt warm. Then there was that large chakra, which seemed large. It seemed to go on forever and was really gloomy." Naruto's description caught everyone off guard. "A sensor?" Jiraiya exclaimed in surprise. "Naruto possesses a sensor-like ability of some sort. And it is strong and long range if it can sense the two of you nearly 2 miles from the village." Although they were a little concerned, Minato and Kushina looked at Naruto with a certain pride. They had planned to start training him at age 6, but now that these sensor-like abilities had surfaced, they knew it was time to start a year early, and they could tell by the large chakra he claimed to be able to feel that it was the Kyuubi. They knew they would be very busy with the twins, Mito being a Jinchuriki, and making sure the seal was functioning properly, in addition to repairing the village from the damage caused by the attack, so they weren't sure how to train him. Without noticing Naruto slowly dozing off in his mother's arms, the adults started discussing the night's events and his unexpected new ability. The majority of the buildings destroyed were in the front half of the village, leaving the back half mostly intact, fortunately including the hospital, the academy, the graveyard, and most of the shinobi clan compounds. A month after the attack, life in the Leaf Village gradually started to return to normal as the civilians and shinobi of the Leaf collaborated to repair the damage the Kyuubi had caused. Fortunately, The Inuzuka and the Aburame were the only clan compounds damaged, and they were rebuilt and returned to normal in a matter of weeks. In order to demonstrate that the Leaf was still strong and that they were not going anywhere, large groups of Leaf shinobi went out to finish the daily missions they were given while the civilians and shinobi worked away to help rebuild their homes. The Uzumaki Namikaze family could have lived in the Hokage mansion or had their own clan compound, but Minato and Kushina never wanted the big, lavish lifestyle. They were more than happy with their 6-bedroom house, which has a warm, inviting, and family-like feel to it, and with only 5 of them, there was simply no need for a large clan compound. At the Namikaze residence, everything was quiet until a baby's cry sounded throughout the house, alerting those inside. After rushing from his room, Naruto entered the nursery and saw his mother rocking and holding his sister Mito until she fell asleep. Chan, is Mito-chan alright? As he saw Mito's wriggling form in his mother's arms, he asked as he walked in front of her. Kushina grinned as she turned to face her eldest son, saying, "Yes, Naru-chan, she is fine. She's simply being a bit picky. When he was this age, she seemed to have a lot of energy, like another little someone." She laughed a little at his broad smile. As Naruto turned to face the crib, he saw that his younger brother Eiji was still sleeping soundly. He had observed that both babies were quite active, but they never appeared to wake up simultaneously during the night. He noticed his mother yawning slightly. "Are you alright, Chan?" With an anxious expression on his face, he touched his mother's sleeve and said, "You look sleepy." She gently put Mito back in the crib and saw that she remained quiet, nodding her head slightly and noticing that her eyes were starting to go back to sleep. "Naru-chan, don't be concerned about me. I'm just a little worn out. That's what happens to someone who has 2 new babies," she assured him. "I will be fine, I promise." Naruto nodded, although his slight frown suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Just as Kushina was ready to move, she noticed Naruto carrying a book. "What do you have there, Naru-chan?" she asked, gently removing the book from his hands and crouching in front of him. She noticed that the book read, "Chakra for Beginners," and she glanced at Naruto, who was shuffling a little. Like his 2-san and Chan, does my little Naru-chan aspire to be a ninja? She asked teasingly and saw him nod his head though he was looking down at floor in embarrassment. What brought this on? He whispered to himself, I want to get strong so I can protect you, but Kushina heard him and was taken aback by his response. "To keep me safe?" Her voice was sweet as she spoke. He sniffled a little and said, "To protect you and 2-san, Mito-chan, and Eiji-chan too. I don't want you to get hurt again." He could feel his mother's arms encircling him. "My brave little Naru-chan. How lucky am I to have you as my baby," Kushina said, grinning as she kissed the top of his head. She leaned back, cupped his face in her hands, and kissed the tip of his nose, causing him to wrinkle, saying, "My big strong boy. Are you able to assist me?" Knowing that his mother was a formidable shinobi on par with his Chan Tsunade, he asked with a hopeful expression. Kushina gave Naruto a slight disappointment by biting her lip and shaking her head. "I'm sorry, Naru-chan, but right now I'm too busy to assist you. In addition, some of the other mothers will be visiting me shortly. I wish I could help, but that will have to wait until later." She smiled and said, "But hey," to him. "Why don't you ask you 2-san? I'm sure you would like to help you," she replied. After giving it some thought, Naruto nodded. He smiled and said, "I guess I could." "I'm sorry again, Naru-chan." His mother smiled as he left the room, saying, "It's okay, Chan, you're busy, so another time." She was a little let down that she couldn't train him, but she simply didn't have the time because she was so busy. She invited some of the other new shinobi mothers to visit so they could all meet Mito and Eiji and catch up. Makoto Uchiha, her childhood rival and oldest friend, was bringing her youngest son Sasuke along. After that, Sume Inuzuka arrived with her son Kiba. After that, Yoshino Nara and Inori Yamanaka arrived with their infant children, Shikamaru and Ino. She continued working and getting the living room ready for the other mothers to visit, shaking her head in the knowledge that she could assist him at a later time. In the meantime, Naruto knocked on the door of his father's office at the back of the house. He heard someone say, "Come in," so he opened the door and entered. When Naruto entered, Minato was bent over his desk completing some paperwork. In order to be available to assist Kushina with the twins in the event that he needed it, he has been spending some time in his home office since the twins were born rather than in the Hokage office. He said, "Hey Naru-chan," as he saw Naruto enter. His son gave him a little laugh as he picked Naruto up and placed him on his lap. He inquired, "Is your Chan okay?" to find out how his wife was doing. "She is okay. She is getting ready for some of the others' mommies when they come over." They both laughed as he said, "Ah, well then we best stay out of the way. You know what your Chan is like when her girly friends come over." Whether it was about something as trivial as who can cook the best or who has won the most matches in their previous spars, Kushina and Makoto always ended up fighting whenever the other moms got together. The rivalry between the two, even when they were pregnant, drove both husbands into the insane house. Looking at his son, Minato questioned, "So, is there anything you need, Naru-chan?" With a nod, Naruto showed him the book. Minato smiled at the title after taking a look at the cover. Minato and the others were still a little shocked that Naruto had it because there had been no prior indication of it, leading them to believe that Naruto was either unaware of it or that it only appeared during the attack. "So you want to start training to become a shinobi? You have already impressed me and the others with those sensor abilities you seem to have." Once more, Naruto nodded. "I was wondering if you could teach me how to use chakra since I want to get strong." "And why do you want to get strong, Naru-chan?" he inquired. The young boy in his lap remarked, "So I can protect my family and the village." When Minato heard what he had to say, she grinned broadly and tousled Naruto's hair. "That's a great reason for wanting to get strong, Naru-chan. If you have a goal like that, then you will definitely become a strong shinobi one day." "You think so?" Naruto asked naively, implying that Kushina would have given him a firm embrace if she had been present. Naruto grinned as Minato replied, "I know so." In the hopes that his father would agree, he asked To-san, "So do you think you could help me train?" But when he saw him shake his head while wearing an apologetic expression, his hopes were crushed. "I am sorry, Naru-chan, but I am too busy right now. I need to get this paperwork done soon and then I have a meeting in half an hour. I don't have the time." With a sad expression, Naruto said, "Oh," wondering who could help him now that his father was unable to assist him either. He hoped it wouldn't depress him. "Maybe another time, huh? I can show you a few cool moves and I am sure your mother would like to show you a thing of two." Naruto reclaimed the book from Minato and said, "Okay, To-chan." He moved away from his father's lap and headed for the door. His father was about to return to work when he asked, "To-chan, is it okay to go down to the park?" Minato nibbled on his lip. Although he did not mind Naruto going to the park, he did not want him to go out alone because he was only 5 years old. A few months ago, he made that mistake, and as a result, his wife, who was furious and worried about where her baby was, beat him up. Needless to say, when he returned with Sarutobi, he was nearly strangled by the embrace his mother gave him. When he said, "Well, I guess that would be okay, but I want you back here by 3 o'clock, Naruto nodded. "And you only go to the one that is a few minutes away, not the one in the center of the village." He gave a second nod. Naruto nodded once more before Minato let out a sigh. "Plus you have to have an Anbu follow you." "Alright, go on and have fun. But be careful." He said, "I will too, Chan, I promise," and left. After letting out another sigh, Minato called out Anbu. As he did, a male Anbu wearing a lion mask materialized at his side. "Follow my son and make sure he does not get into any trouble or gets hurt." The Anbu said, "Hi Hokage-sama," and then he walked away, leaving Minato to resume his work. Alongside Naruto, when Naruto arrived at the little park, he discovered that it was deserted and that the swing seats were only being moved by the wind. His father took him here when he wasn't too busy, but his mother took him here most of the time when she could. Despite its small size, the park was close by and a quiet place he always liked. When Naruto first began talking, Minato and Kushina had observed that about him. Naruto had always kept to himself and only really talked when it was necessary or worthwhile. However, he was very courteous when he did, which many found admirable because most people his age tended to say whatever came to mind. He walked over, took a seat, and started to swing slowly before turning to face the book he was holding. The other day, while Kakashi was showing him around the village, he had purchased this book from a shinobi bookshop. Evidently, Naruto pouted because Kakashi had to gather some sort of book that he was not permitted to view. Naruto was examining the shinobi section during that time. He picked up the Chakra for Beginners book even though he had trouble reading most of the titles. Then he requested that Kakashi get it for him. To Naruto's delight, Kakashi glanced at the book once before shrugging and paying for it. Naruto opened the book and attempted to read, but he found that some of the words were a bit too long and that he had trouble pronouncing them correctly. He squinted his eyes and sat there for 10 minutes or so trying to read it before becoming a little impatient and setting the book down on the floor next to him. When he started to swing, he asked himself, how can I be a good ninja like Ka, Chan and 2.San if I can't even read well? He felt a rather powerful energy reside on the roof he was looking up on. Maybe that is the Anbu.San 2.San sent to watch over me, he considered. A voice called to him from behind after a few more minutes of silence. His expression lightened slightly as he turned to look behind him and saw Shizune, his Ba, Chan's apprentice, approaching him with Tsunade's pet pig Tun in her arms and her customary warm smile. He said courteously, "Hi Shizune-san," as the 17-year-old medic Nin sat down beside him. She always thought he was cute and adorable, and he had met her a few times when Tsunade came to visit his family. She was also always very nice to him. She tapped his nose and said, "Hello Naru-chan. What did I tell you about calling me San? You can either call me Shizune-chan or Shizune-chan." Naruto grinned slightly as he nodded. She smiled as he said, "Okay Chan." Oink, oink. Naruto petted Tun while giggling a little. He nuzzled his leg and said, "Hi Tun. Now what are you doing here all by yourself? Is your Ka, Chan or 2.San not here?" They were busy. Ka, Chan has the others' clan mommies over for lunch and 2.San is busy with paperwork. Since she knew Tsunade was at the hospital ensuring that the staff did not take it easy, she inquired, "What about Kakashi or Jiraiya?" Once more, Naruto shook his head. Shizune questioned, "So you are here all by yourself?" Because he didn't like that Naruto was by himself. Again, he shook his head. Shizune looked up as he pointed to the nearby building's roof and said, "No, the Anbu.San is up on the roof though he feels a little bored." With a somewhat doubtful expression, she questioned, "The Anbu is up there? How do you know?" "I can feel him up there." When Shizune thought, "Oh, that's right, Lady Tsunade mentioned Naruto had some kind of sensor ability. Though I wonder how strong it is. For one so young to have sensor abilities was quite a feat in itself." It demonstrated to her Naruto's potential strength as he grew older, since shinobi who could sense other people were highly regarded and respected by others, plus sensors were always advantageous. When Naruto was struggling with his tiny shoulders, she questioned, "Then how come you could not feel me coming towards you?" He pouted a little and said, "I don't know. I was not really paying attention," which made Shizune laugh into her sleeve. She wanted to see how well these sensor abilities worked, so she asked, "So do you think you could tell me what I am feeling at the moment?" Naruto looked at Shizune and began, "URM." But when he tried to concentrate, Shizune had to force herself not to cuddle him because he looked so cute. After a minute or so of silence, Naruto finally responded, "You feel happy and cheery but a little cheeky as well," he said. Shizune showed her admiration by clapping her hands when he did. "That's very good Naru-chan. I see your Ba Chan's not over-exaggerating when she said you had sensor ability. You could become a very strong ninja just like your parents with that ability." "Really? You think I can?" 2.San I could be strong because I want to protect my family and the village." He let out a gasp. Before grabbing him and starting to tickle his stomach, she remarked, "Then your 2.San is a very smart man." He exclaimed, "No nay. Chan stop ha it tickles." Shizune laughed, and Tun appeared to be attempting to connect with him by licking his ear. As she sat up and watched Tun licked Naruto, causing him to laugh aloud. She noticed the book on the side and went to retrieve it. She read Chakra for Beginners, then grinned and turned to face Naruto. As Naruto sat up after Tun stopped licking him and she noticed him nod his head. She asked, "Naru-chan, did you come here to try and learn how to be a ninja?" He looked a little embarrassed, but the 17-year-old gently raised his head with her index finger and said, "I tried to but I could not read it. There were too many big words and I did not understand it very well." "Don't worry Naru-chan, there is nothing to be embarrassed about. I think it is a good thing that you are trying to learn this. It shows that you understand that to be a ninja you have to start right at the bottom and work your way up." She nodded as he asked, "Really?" With a hopeful expression on his face, she said, "If you like, I can go over it with you and teach you how to access your chakra." "Really, you would do that? Don't you have other things you need to do today?" "I already finished my shift at the hospital and it is either help you or get bored sitting at home. And how could I ever not want to help little Naru-chan?" Leaning against the swing bars, she lifted Naruto from his position and placed him in her lap. They started reading together after the book was put in front of them. Chakra is a blend of the physical and spiritual energy of the body. Every jutsu technique that has been developed and will be developed requires it. Once shaped, it can be directed to any of the body's 361 chakra points via the chakra circulatory system, which functions similarly to the blood circulatory system. Through a variety of techniques, the most popular being hand seals. In addition to taijutsu, hand seals practice a variety of ninjutsu, genjutsu, and other secret arts. Hand seals control the precise amount of chakra required to execute a basic technique. From the most basic jutsu to the most dynamic and potent, this will differ. Bird, boar, dog, dragon, ox, tiger, serpent, rat, horse, monkey, hare, and ram are the hand seals. Shizune read Naruto about chakra and clarified some of the parts he did not fully understand while the two sat there for approximately an hour. She also pointed out the locations of specific chakra points on her arms to ensure he understood what chakra was and how many there were in the body. He was sitting on her lap when she asked, "Do you understand, Naruto?" He nodded as he studied one of the images that showed the union of spiritual and physical energies to form chakra. He seemed a little eager to get started, so he asked, "Can we try to see if I can use my chakra?" Shizune said kindly, "Sure," as Naruto leapt from her lap and took a seat in front of her. She instructed Naruto to get in a meditative pose like I am doing, while he watched and attempted it on his own, though Shizune had to assist him somewhat because his legs were still very small. "You comfortable?" she inquired, and Naruto nodded his head before she started. "Okay Naruto. Chan, first I want to make this hand sign. This is the Ram hand sign. Using any one of the hand signs will help to bring out your chakra and bring it to the surface. The Ram hand sign is the one most used when starting out to first draw their chakra." He tried to imitate the hand signal Shizune was giving him and asked, "Like this?" Before he got it just right, she watched and slightly adjusted it with two of his fingers. "Now to draw out your chakra you have to dig deep inside and try to draw it out. Search deep down and wait until you feel a warm sensation in your stomach. When you feel it, try to focus in on it and then pull it out to the surface. I will demonstrate." Shizune closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and then exhaled as Naruto watched. About 10 seconds later, Shizune gave Naruto a powerful energy boost that took him by surprise. Even though it wasn't nearly as large as his two Sans or Chan, he could feel the warmth of it and the way it flowed from her. He could just barely see a blue aura enveloping her if he narrowed his eyes. When she stopped and opened her eyes, he asked, "Was that chakra? The blue thing around you?" "It was. It will be a light blue color and visible around you if you are able to surge out enough chakra." She said, "Now it's your turn," and he nodded. "But don't be upset if you can't do it, Naru-chan. Activating your chakra for the first time takes time." He eagerly replied, "Okay, but I will try my best," while Shizune grinned and stroked Tun, who was at her side. She saw Naruto close his eyes and take deep breaths, just like she had just done. His Ram hand sign was trembling a little, but she could tell that he was a little anxious because he clearly didn't want to disappoint her. Inquiring as to whether his Hokage's son would be able to activate his chakra for the first time, the Anbu assigned to watch Naruto up on the building leaned forward to gain a better view, but he was still out of sight. A few minutes later, Naruto opened his eyes and said, "I couldn't find it," with a dejected expression on his face. "That warm sensation in my stomach did not exist. I did mention that you might not be able to do it the first time, so don't worry, Naru-chan. Initially, it requires several attempts. It will happen eventually if you just keep trying." He closed his eyes, took several deep breaths, and returned to his meditative pose, making the Ram hand sign once more. "Okay, I guess I can try again," he said. Shizune watches once more as Tun looks at him. His thoughts were, "I have to find a pull in my tummy," and he searched around as calmly as possible. After another minute, he was still unable to feel it, so he gritted his teeth a little. In order to defend Chan, 2.San, Mito-chan, and Eiji-chan, I must unlock my chakra. Until I find it, I won't give up, he thought. After finishing, he felt a tug in his stomach and a warm sensation there. Could this be my chakra? He asked himself before following Shizune's instructions and focusing on the warning feeling and drawing it to the surface. When he did, his fingers and toes tingled and it felt as though his entire body had suddenly warmed up. Shizune was about to approach Naruto to give him a heartfelt hug for successfully activating his chakra for the first time when she noticed a small blue aura surrounding him, but she was taken aback by the size of his chakra. The size of his chakra is already comparable to that of fresh genin. Is this a result of his Uzumaki ancestry? When Kushina Sama first activated her chakras. I don't think she had this much, even though I know she had a lot when she was younger. However, she could also sense how wild it felt. Naruto would probably need to be shown one of the fundamental chakra control exercises once he became accustomed to using his chakra. Though his mask concealed it, the Anbu was a little taken aback up on the building, though he wasn't particularly shocked given who his parents were. He opened his eyes to see Shizune and Tun staring at him with happy expressions, which caused him to smile broadly. Shizune shook Naruto a little, which caused him to lose concentration and the chakra he was emitting to stop. He jumped up and exclaimed, "I did it." However, as soon as he did, he felt exhausted and his body went a little rigid, causing him to fall to the ground. When the Anbu on the build saw Naruto fall, he was about to move, but Shizune was in front of him and held him in a warm embrace. Shizune had it covered. "What is causing my drowsiness?" He yawned in Shizune's arms and asked. "You feel exhausted now because you expended a lot of chakra when you activated it, silly Naru-chan." As Tun nuzzled his leg, she reassured him, "Don't worry, you'll be fine after some rest and some food in your stomach. I believe this is sufficient for today." With Naruto in her left arm, she picked up the book under her arms and said, "Let's get you home." They walked back home, silently keeping watch over the Anbu as they left the park. Naruto interrupted halfway there, saying, "Hey, Chan?" "Yes, Naru-chan." She looked down at him and asked, "Are you a ninja of any kind?" She answered, somewhat surprised that he had asked. "Well, I work as a medic. I work mostly in hospitals because I practice medical ninjutsu." He said, "Medical ninjutsu? What's that?" Which caused Shizune to chuckle a little. Medical ninjutsu is a type of ninjutsu that is used to heal people when they get hurt. Like when people are sick and not feeling good. Exactly, I am okay at fighting but I prefer healing people, which is why I am Lady Tsunade's apprentice. She is the best medic nin in the whole world. The words, "Wow," he muttered to himself. Chan is really strong. She is one of the strongest in the village and is known all over the world as one of the strongest kunoichi there has ever been. He made her laugh once more when he asked, "So does that mean you are really powerful too?" "I am nowhere near as powerful as your Chan, but I like to think that I am capable of looking after myself. I am a Chunin level ninja, so I know how to defend myself, which is the main thing." Naruto simply nodded and noticed that his eyes were getting heavy. They showed up outside his house and entered. He recognized one of the female voices he heard coming from the living room as Kushina's. Shizune passed the living room where Kushina and the other mothers were as she made her way to the stairs. Yoshino Nara and Sume Inuzuka were seated on one seat, while Makoto Uchiha and Inora Yamanaka were seated next to her. The twins were in a small crib directly in front of Kushina, and all of the mothers had small wrapped bundles in their arms. When the mothers looked up, they saw Shizune in the doorway, holding Naruto in her arms as if he were about to nod off. Kushina stood up and said, "Hello Shizune," while the other mothers greeted the teenage girl. When she turned to face Naruto, he waved hello. She said, "Did you have fun today, Naru-chan?" And he nodded wearily. Shizune surprised the women in the room by saying, "He has been great today. He unlocked his chakra for the first time." They all grinned and congratulated him on his accomplishment. The mothers cooed at him as he said, "Thank you," half mumbling and not really listening. He nuzzled into Shizune as Kushina approached him and gave him a gentle forehead kiss. "My little Naru-chan, already beginning his path to becoming a shinobi. I know your San will be proud when he gets home." Makoto said, "Little Naru-chan has gotten big since I last saw him," as she waved to Naruto while standing next to Kushina. "He is the same size as my little Itachi." When they noticed Naruto yawning, Kushina asked Shizune if he could put Naruto to bed for her, and Shizune promptly agreed. As she ascended the stairs and entered his room, she was struck by how orderly everything was, and she placed him on his bed, which had blue covers and a small shuriken on the front. She put his book on the little desk next to the bed and slipped out of the room, leaving the door slightly ajar. When Kushina said, "Thank you for helping him today, Shizune simply waved it away. "I was happy to help him. I love spending time with little Naru-chan." Kushina said, "In that case, might I ask you a favor?" Shizune nodded. With the twins, I might not have much time for Naruto, and the same can be said with Minato with him helping rebuild the village. I was wondering, would it be possible for you to help Naru-chan with his chakra? Although Shizune was somewhat surprised by the request, she could understand Kushina's perspective. she would have had little time for Naruto because she would have had to devote all of her attention to her two newborns. Additionally, Minato's duties as Hokage and the current state of the village meant the same thing to Naruto. Of course Kushina. Sama, I would love to help Naru-chan. Thank you Shizune, Kushina said before the two said their goodbyes. Shizune then left the house, and Kushina returned to the living room to continue talking with the other mothers. Shizune, who was sitting next to the young blonde, read a book on medical ninjutsu and watched Naruto, who was holding 5 leaves, when she asked, "How is the exercise coming along Naru-chan?" At the moment, the young blonde was attempting to use only his chakra to balance the leaves on the tips of his fingers. Shizune had explained to him that it was a technique for developing chakra control. He sat on the ground and shakily balanced the 5 leaves on the tips of his fingers, saying, "It's coming along okay Nae-chan. I think I almost got it." With a slight expression of admiration on her face, Shizune leaned in to get a closer look. Despite his youth and the size of his chakra for his age, Naruto's surprisingly high level of chakra control and rapid learning rate left her feeling a little astounded. He loved everything that had to do with ninjas and was keen to learn. Additionally, he was constantly asking questions, which Shizune recognized as a positive trait because asking questions and seeking assistance was the best way to learn, and Naruto had no trouble doing either. She had been teaching Naruto for nearly a year, primarily teaching him about the leaf and its clans, as well as more about chakra. In the past month, she had started teaching him control since Naruto now understood it well enough for a 6-year-old. "That's very good Naru-chan. Your control is very good, your parents would be very proud," she replied. He said, "I guess," with a half-smile that lacked the usual upbeat attitude he usually wore. Shizune had recognized one. She knew what was making him so depressed. She had observed that Kushina and Minato had been spending nearly all of their time with the twins and had made very little time for Naruto over the past few months. Although the twins appeared nearly identical, Mito's deep-looking whisker marks on his cheeks allowed them to be distinguished from one another. The twins' first birthday was celebrated a few weeks ago, and their parents made a big deal out of it because they wanted it to be a memorable occasion. Naruto's birthday, which was a low-key event, had only been a week prior, as he saw Hiruzen, Tsunade, and even Jiraiya and Kakashi, who were constantly on missions. He naturally received gifts and cake. Even though it was Naruto's birthday, Shizune had observed that Kushina and Minato had mostly focused on Mito and Eiji, which, she had to admit, did not particularly impress her. She was aware that the twins required more care due to their advanced age, but she did not like that Naruto was feeling somewhat excluded. "Let's take a break Naru-chan. You have done very well today. I think you have earned yourself a little treat for today." The word, treat, seemed to lighten Naruto's face, causing the leaves to fall from the tips of his fingers and land on the ground. Naruto nodded his head quickly in agreement as she said, "Since it's pretty warm today, we'll take this stuff home first and then how about we get some ice cream? Does that sound good?" She grasped his hand and they strolled in the direction of Naruto's residence. As they traveled to Naruto's house, they had a brief conversation during which Naruto again questioned Shizune about her status as a medic.nin. He had been asking her a lot of questions about her motivations for wanting to be a medic.nin and their skills ever since she told him she was one. She was a little surprised that Naruto might be interested in learning medical ninjutsu, but she would also be thrilled if he did. He had demonstrated at 6 that he had fairly good control and could be among the best at chakra control if he was focused. Although she liked the idea of Naruto being a medic.nin, that was not how she saw him. However, it didn't hurt to demonstrate some medical ninjutsu to him later on. "I want to make sure little Naru-chan is prepared for the life of a shinobi as best as I can." Since the village had practically fallen in love with Naruto from the moment he was born, some of the shinobi and civilians they passed waved to the two and greeted them warmly. They noticed Kushina just leaving the house with the twins strapped into a stroller as they got closer to the Uzumaki Namikaze residence. Mito had a dummy in her mouth, and Eiji was sound asleep. With a cheerful expression, Naruto called out, "Hi Ka-chan," and approached his mother, causing Kushina to turn to face him and smile. As she made sure the twins were securely buckled up and that the stroller had everything she needed, she said, "Hello Naru-chan. How was our study session Shizune?" "It's going great. I can balance 5 leaves on my fingers now," she said. "That's great
Hello, how's it
Naru-chan,"
going?
without raising her gaze from the stroller. He frowned slightly as he asked, "So where are you going?" She patted his head and smiled slightly as she said, "I'm taking the twins for a walk around the market and then we are visiting your father at the office." He began, "Maybe I can but realized Kushina had already started to leave. He bid them both farewell and departed the house. He concluded by glancing at the ground and letting out a small sigh. Go with you. In the meantime, Shizune was frowning. It seemed as though she had already considered it. Despite initially focusing on Naruto, Kushina's focus soon returned to the twins. You okay, Naru-chan? She inquired, a little alarmed. With another half smile, he said, I'm fine, Ne-chan. Ka-chan is just busy again and I understand. He hurried inside to store his equipment before making a hasty return. She shook her head and wiped the frown from her face before taking Naruto's hand once more and heading into the middle of the village to grab some ice cream. After 20 minutes, Naruto had an orange ice cone and Shizune was licking a mint chocolate chip ice cone as they left the ice cream shop. He was eating it up pretty fast. When she noticed that Naruto had ice cream on the tip of his nose, she tried not to laugh and reprimanded him, saying, Slow down, Naru-chan, or you will give yourself brain freeze. After wiping his nose with the end of her sleeve, she discovered that he was grinning at her with a big, silly smile and had orange ice cream all over his cheeks. As she wiped the remainder of his face and gave him a gentle tickle, she remarked, You are so messy at eating ice cream, Naru-chan. He said, No, Ne-chan, or I will drop my ice cream, which fortunately caused her to stop. After a few minutes of walking, Shizune tapped Naruto's shoulder, attracting his attention. The two then settled down on a little bench to simply enjoy the sun and observe the passing people. She pointed to a Chunin shinobi with a bandana around his head and a senbon in his mouth, saying, Naru-chan, tell me what Genma is feeling at the moment. Before he spoke, he hummed, while concentrating on the Chunin as he passed. He feels a little bored but a little lazy at the same time, like he does not know what to do. She thought, sounds like Genma, and then she gestured to a member of the Inuzuka clan who was walking next to them with their ninja hounds. Shizune nodded in agreement, thinking that Inuzuka men were generally a little too self-assured. Naruto continued, he feels happy and excited and maybe a little bit too cocky as well. Shizune had thought it was a great way for Naruto to get used to his sensor abilities, even though what they were doing might be considered a bit rude to some. Additionally, he was able to familiarize himself with the people in the village by sensing their energies. In this manner, as he grew older, it would be easier for him to determine who lived in Konoha and who did not, as well as whether they had good or bad intentions for their home. She made him smile by saying, That's very good, Naru-chan. You are getting better with those sensor abilities of yours. However, as he did, he sensed a strong, familiar signature approaching them from behind. He glanced behind them, which made Shizune follow suit, but he smiled when he recognized the person. Hey Asuma-san, he said, licking his ice cream and waving to the young Jonin. He nodded to her and took a drag from his cigarette before saying, Hey Naruto, hey Shizune. Hello Asuma-san. Just getting back from a mission? She inquired, noticing that he appeared somewhat worn out. He gave a head nod. Yeah, just a few minutes ago actually. Guy is giving the mission report to the Hokage. Shizune nodded, but he felt sorry for Asuma. The man was a bit too much and overbearing, even though she liked Guy and he was a good friend. Asuma raised an eyebrow in response to Naruto's gentle reprimand. Asuma-san, you know you should not smoke. Ne-chan says it bad for your health. Shizune giggled a little into her hand. True, but I summon a bit of chakra around my lungs so that it does not do as much damage. Plus I am as healthy as a horse. With utter innocence in his voice, he questioned, Yeah, but Ne-chan says if a horse has to be put down when it breaks its legs, does that mean you will have to put down when they make your lungs go bad? While Shizune was laughing uncontrollably, Asuma gazed at Naruto with a hint of incredulity. In an attempt to regain self-control, she said, You have to admit Asuma, he has got you there. In an attempt to escape this embarrassing circumstance of being outwitted by a 6-year-old, Asuma muttered something under his breath before shaking his head. Anyway, I am about to head home and back to the Sarutobi Manor. If you two are done with your session today, why don't you come along? My pops should be there and I am sure he would like to see Naruto, he suggested. The idea of seeing his Gigi made Naruto happy, and he gave Shizune a beseeching glance. Using a puppy dog expression, he said, Can we Ne-chan, please? Despite her desire to give him a hug, she was able to maintain her composure. She added to Naruto's smile by saying, Sure, Naruto, I don't see why not. Plus, who knows, maybe your Gigi will have some shinobi wisdom to give you. Shizune and Naruto now trailed behind Asuma as he started to head back home, saying, "If there is anything my dad has its wisdom by the shed loads." Asuma described his mission, which was to destroy a bandit encampment that had been set up 2 days outside the village and was terrorizing a nearby village, as they made their way to the Sarutobi Manor. Since Naruto was still a child and the two older teens did not want to expose him to the killing aspect of a shinobi duty until he was a little older, they made sure he did not hear any of the graphic parts even though Naruto tried to listen. They reached a huge manor house that was 3 stories high and extremely wide, with new flower beds adorning the exterior. After they had walked and removed their sandals, Asuma exclaimed, "Yo, Dad, I'm back and we got guests." They recognized Sarutobi's voice and started to move in its direction when they heard, "I'm in the dining room." They entered the dining room of the house and saw Sarutobi sitting on a cushion at the low table, writing elegant looking giant kanji on paper, brushes, and ink that were spread out in front of him. "Jiji!" Naruto yelled as he charged at Sarutobi. The former Hokage noticed Naruto and gave the young blonde a grandfatherly grin. The blonde was hugged and placed on the cushion next to him. "Naruto-kun, this is a nice surprise," he said. "And Shizune-chan, it's nice to see you again." She bowed slightly and said, "Hello Sarutobi-sama," before sitting down next to Naruto. As he finished the smoke in his mouth, Sarutobi turned to face his son standing in the doorway and asked, "How did the mission go, Asuma?" Hiruzen nodded to his son and watched him leave before turning to Naruto. "It went well, but I am feeling a little tired, so I'm going to head to bed to get some rest." "So Naruto-kun, it's nice to have you over today. If I had known I would have had some tea and sweets ready," he replied. "That's okay, Jiji. Chan said I did good today in my studies, so we went to get ice cream." "And how are your studies going? I'm sure your parents are very pleased to see you on your way to becoming a great shinobi." Hiruzen was a little concerned when he saw the little flash of sadness in Naruto's eyes, but he still half smiled as he had earlier. He glanced at Shizune, who simply gave him a "tell you later" expression. He exclaimed, feeling pleased with himself, "I can already balance 5 leaves on one hand now. Chan taught me the leaf balancing exercise for my chakra control." "Well, that's very good, Naruto-kun. You are well on your way to becoming a great shinobi. Everybody starts at the bottom, and I am glad that you know that and are not trying anything that is currently out of your reach," he said. "You want to see?" And Hiruzen nodded, saying he would. Leaping from his chair, Naruto unlocked a door leading to the enormous training area and garden behind the manor house. Sarutobi turned to face Shizune as he left, and Shizune let out a small sigh. With a hint of sadness, she said, "You saw it too, didn't you? Why did he look a little sad when I mentioned Kushina and Minato? Everything is okay at home, is it not?" he inquired. "Everything is fine from what I can see, but I think Naruto is having a hard time due to the twins," she stated. Sarutobi asked her to clarify her meaning. "I can't help but notice that over the last couple of months Kushina, Sama and Minato, Sama's attention had been fixed mainly on the twins lately and they seem to be spending most of their free time with them. I think Naruto has been feeling a little left out due to the lack of attention they have been giving him lately. Also, when he asks them to help him with his session or just to play a little they are normally busy." Hiruzen proposed, "Well, something like this was always going to happen. After all, with the twins being so young, it is only natural that their attention to be focused more on them. Oh, I know, and I am probably just looking into it too much, but at Naruto's birthday a few weeks ago, I noticed that their attention was again mainly focused on the twins and not on Naruto. Don't you think that is a little odd?" she said with a slight sigh. "I understand what you mean, Shizune, but unfortunately sometimes these things are to be expected with having more than one child. Plus, since Mito is a Jinchuriki, there is always that small chance that something may happen with the seal. They're probably just being cautious." Now it was Shizune who let out a small sigh. She shook her head and said, "Yeah, I guess you were right. I am sure it is just temporary." She opened her mouth to speak, but Naruto interrupted them when he returned. But when she saw Tsunade appear behind Naruto, she was a little taken aback. As Hiruzen welcomed his former pupil, she questioned, "Lady Tsunade, what are you doing here?" She hugged Naruto from behind and made him smile up at her. "I thought I would visit Sensei while I had some time away from the hospital. It's an added bonus that I get to see little Naru-chan. I have not seen him since his birthday," she said. As they watched Naruto demonstrate his ability to perform the leaf exercise, they were all seated around the table. Shizune gave him a pat on the back as Sarutobi and Tsunade applauded his success. Naruto concentrated on the items on the table while Shizune approached to talk to Tsunade. As Naruto examined the tools on the table and the paper with the kanji written on it, he questioned, Gigi, what are all the scribbles and kanjis for? He appeared somewhat intrigued by them. He took a brush with a bit of ink on the end and made the kanji for fire on one of the pieces of paper. Ah well, this is my calligraphy equipment Naruto.kun. It helps with keeping my writing abilities neat and readable. Plus it is a practice that is great for practicing to write fa, injutsu seals, he explained. Naruto observed with curiosity. Fu. Fa, injutsu. He asked out loud, his face in a contemplative pose. As Shizune laughed into her sleeve at his description, he asked Sarutobi, is that the one where you make thing go poof and put them in another object? Sarutobi ruffled his hair and laughed a little too. Yes, that is one way to describe it Naruto.kun. It's also a type of shinobi practice your 2.san and ka. Chan are masters as. When it comes to fa, injutsu your parents are the best there is. His eyes were a little wide as he said, really? And Hiruzen nodded. Are you good at fa, injutsu too Gigi? Sarutobi pondered and tapped his chin. He said, well, I guess I'm not bad. Do you know how the art of sealing works, Naru-chan? But Naruto shook his head. Shizune listened to the description as Sarutobi went on to explain. Well, fa, injutsu is a type of jutsu that seal objects, living beings, chakra, along with a wide variety of other things within another object. Fa, injutsu can also be used to unseal objects either from within something or someone. He added, that you are already aware of, and Naruto nodded, allowing him to go on. Well, with fa, injutsu there are 10 levels on sealing, with level 1 being for beginners and then level 10 being for masters. Your ka, chan and 2.san are both level 10 fa, injutsu masters and are most likely the only level 10 fa, injutsu masters in the world. Jiraiya meanwhile is a level 8, Tsunade 7 while Kakashi is a level 6. Naruto said, whoa, that's so cool, and Sarutobi nodded. So then what level are you at? It must be pretty high because you're so strong. Ah well, while I am not as good at sealing like your parents or Jiraiya, I do know my way around seals and I can spot a great seal when I see one. My fa, injutsu skills are a level 7 like your ba, chan. Cool, he said, glancing at the apparatus before returning his attention to Sarutobi. He surprised the former Hokage by asking, could you teach me Gigi? Before nodding and grinning in response. I can, however, before you learn about sealing you need to have a steady hand and be able to write and draw neatly and elegantly. That way the seal will be able to work. I can teach you calligraphy first as a first step, he said while nodding to Naruto. He gave Naruto a brush and a small palette of ink, placed a few large sheets of paper in front of him, and gave him instructions. He was aware that Naruto's handwriting was good for someone his age, but he also understood that practice was necessary to get the symbols exactly right because one mistake could spell disaster. As Naruto nodded and tipped his brush into one of the ink palettes, he said, okay, Naruto.kun. Let's start easy. I'll draw the kanji for fire that I did moments ago. I'll go slowly so you can follow the movement. As Sarutobi's brush moved smoothly across the paper, Naruto tried his hardest to follow the motion slowly and carefully. Shizune and Tsunade watched from the sidelines, curious to see when Naruto would start to show an interest in seals. Naruto's deep interest in the art of sealing was almost inevitable given his Uzumaki ancestry and his parents' backgrounds. Naruto licked his lips slightly and protruded his tongue to demonstrate how intently he was focused. Hiruzen put down his brush after completing the symbol and turned to face Naruto, who had just completed the final section, before making the final tiny brush motion. He put down his brush, just like Sarutobi. In order to check for any minor errors, Hiruzen narrowed his eyes and examined it. Then he grinned a few seconds later. He put the paper back on the table and remarked, this is very good for a first try Naruto.kun, which made Naruto smile. Though next time try and make the bottom right leg of the kanji a little longer since the one on this is a little short. After giving it a serious nod, Naruto tried it once more. Hiruzen taught Naruto how to draw all the element symbols and had him write sentences as fast as he could while attempting to keep the writing and symbols as neat and beautiful as possible. The two spent a few hours practicing calligraphy. Naruto was performing admirably for his first attempt at calligraphy. Hiruzen had to concede. Only a few minor details needed to be adjusted when he first drew a new symbol. They all looked extremely professional after that, and Hiruzen was unable to find any flaws in them. He thought, the Uzumaki blood runs strong in you Naruto.kun, and proceeded to show him the iron symbol. As they conversed quietly and observed Naruto working with Hiruzen, Tsunade told Shizune, the little guy is doing well. She thought it was adorable how determined he appeared. Tsunade's eyebrows shot up in surprise as she said, "You know Naru. Chan has been asking me a lot of questions about medic nins lately." Since few kids were actually aware of medic nins, Tsunade stated candidly, "Really? I did not think medic nins were something little Naru Chan would be interested in. You would be surprised. He is very curious about all the different types of shinobi there and as always asks me about the things I do as a medic.nin. So you think he could be a medic.nin one day?" No, I don't think Naruto would be a medic.nin. However, I do think he would be interested to learn some medical ninjutsu. Because she spent a lot of time at the hospital, Tsunade was not entirely aware of Naruto's abilities or strengths, so she asked, "You think he could?" He is very smart for his age and he always asks questions, which is a good thing. Plus, for the amount of chakra he has for his age and having pretty good control over it, which he demonstrated earlier, I think Naruto learning some medical ninjutsu could be possible for him and be a big help to him. As she considered it, Tsunade tapped her fingers against her chin. Since many people took medical ninjutsu for granted, she did enjoy demonstrating its superiority. She developed her creation rebirth technique and discovered her superhuman strength thanks to medical ninjutsu. Additionally, I want to instruct Naru Chan. He will undoubtedly achieve great things because Kushina and Minato are his parents, and Naru Chan would get off to a great start if I could help him get ready for the life of a shinobi like Shizune already has. With Shizune grinning, she remarked, "I will consider it. Maybe teaching Naru Chan a little medical ninjutsu would not be a bad thing." Afterwards at the home of Uzumaki, Namikaze Naruto was seated in front of the coffee table on the living room floor. Shortly after he finished practicing calligraphy with his Jiji, Sarutobi took Naruto out and gave him a small set of calligraphy tools so he could practice at home. Sarutobi instructed him to ensure that he could quickly and effortlessly draw the kanji on the paper, so he chose to spend the remainder of the day doing just that. Nah, he heard from next to him, and he grinned when he saw Mito crawling in his direction. A few days after 2.San, who was both her and Eiji's first birthdays, they exchanged their first words. Naturally, Minato was overjoyed because Naruto's first word was Chan. He said, "Hi Mito. Chan," as his younger sister rolled around next to him after continuing to approach him. He asked, "Did you have a nice dinner?" after noticing that she had some bean and carrot mush on her face. He picked up a napkin, placed his younger sister on his lap, and wiped the mess from her face, causing her to flail her arms in protest. When he finished, he noticed that she was pointing to one of the brushes he was using while ogling what he was doing on the coffee table. As Minato entered with Kushina trailing behind him and Eiji in his arms, he said, "You want to go down at Mito," who simply responded with a delighted squeal. When Minato noticed his daughter on his oldest's lap and placed a brush in her right hand, he remarked, "So that's where you went, Mito. Chan. Went to see what your big brother was doing." Naruto and Mito slowly drew the kanji for water on the paper after Naruto dipped the brush in his ink and Mito's in his own. While Eiji, still in Minato's arm, had his arms outstretched, indicating he wanted to try as well, Mito giggling demonstrated how much she was enjoying it. Before noticing the calligraphy kit, Kushina and Minato were sitting on the couches behind the coffee table, watching Naruto and Mito interact. Minato inquired, "Naru Chan, where did you get this kit?" Naruto returned Minato's smile. "Jiji got it for me. We went to see Jiji today and he taught me calligraphy. He said it was good for practice for seals." Watching as Naruto released Mito's hand as she drew squiggles on the paper, Kushina questioned, "He is right. They're very important for someone who wants to learn seals. Does this mean you are wanting to learn ninjutsu?" Naruto saw the two equally proud smiles come to their faces as he nodded his head. He saw his father leave his chair and head upstairs, only to return a minute later holding a book. "Here Naru Chan, if you want to learn seals then take this and have Shizune or your Jiji read it with you. This is a beginner's guide to ninjutsu that I wrote with Jiraiya. This will help you learn the basics in level 1 ninjutsu. Did your Jiji tell you about the 10 levels?" he asked with a nod. As Kushina watched Mito enjoy her squiggle drawings, she added, "If you are anything like this Naruto then you will fall in love with ninjutsu. Most think it is a dead-end area of ninjutsu but it can be very powerful and so helpful if used right." He thought his parents would agree when he said, "Thank you to San, Chan, but can't you help me with learning sealing?" Jiji and Shizune nay. Chan said you both are the best with seals. However, both of his parents shook their heads, which disappointed him. "Sorry Naru Chan, we just don't have the time to help you right now, maybe some other time." replied Kushina. Minato patted Naruto's head and remarked, "But your Gigi can help you since I know he is quite well versed in seals. He will definitely be able to help you." Even though he was disappointed that they had declined, he tried to sound convincing by saying, "Oh, that's okay. Maybe another time." He said, "Thank you, Naru-chan. Thank you for understanding," as Kushina picked up Mito, causing the girl to gurgle in disappointment as she was having fun with her squiggle time. After giving Naruto a forehead kiss, Kushina got to her feet. With a twin in each arm, she and Minato left the room and went upstairs, saying, "Come on, Miss Messy, let's get you nice and clean with a bath." Neither of the two heard Naruto start a new page and start drawing again as they were leaving. Just a short distance from the Sarutobi Manor, Naruto ran through a small forest, jumped over a log, and tried his best to jump and avoid any obstacles. He stopped and tried to catch his breath, huffing a little. For roughly half an hour, he had been running non-stop, which is remarkable for a 7-year-old. He pondered whether that was because of his Uzumaki ancestry, but he would consider that another day. A small pouch that contained some kunai and shuriken that Sarutobi had purchased for him a few months prior was strapped to the side of his pants. Sarutobi, Shizune, and Tsunade had been taken aback by how rapidly he was picking up the knowledge they were imparting to him since he began studying under them a little more than a year ago. The boy's handwriting had improved to the point where most people would assume it was written by an adult after only 3 months of learning calligraphy from Hiruzen. Hiruzen then started teaching him level 1 Juinjutsu, which Naruto naturally absorbed. Anything pertaining to seals immediately entered his mind and remained there. Sarutobi had been somewhat taken aback by Naruto's rapid acquisition of Fuinjutsu. At his age, he thought he understood seals more quickly than even his parents. The level 1 sealing taught Naruto how to create basic Fuinjutsu seals, such as storage seals using scrolls. Naruto only needed roughly 5 months to grasp the level 1 concept and learn how to create functional, high-quality storage seals. He started practicing level 2 Fuinjutsu by the time he was 7 years old, which was also a huge surprise. Naruto was put to the test by Sarutobi to see how fast he could use the tools in front of them to create a storage seal. Naturally, he was shocked once more when Naruto created one in less than 30 seconds. His parents were thrilled by his rapid mastery of them and were certain that he would become a master of Fuinjutsu in the future. His studies with Shizune, meanwhile, had progressed to the point where even his Chan Suande occasionally stopped by to check on him and offer small advice on particular subjects. He had to balance rocks on the tips of his fingers after mastering the leaf exercise because rocks were heavier and required more chakra to balance. His rapid completion of the exercise once again shocked everyone, proving to Tsunade that Shizune had been right about his chakra control and that she would definitely need to look into teaching him some medical ninjutsu in the future. He was doing so well for someone so young that even Asuma and Kurenai, who would watch him practice, were in awe. They knew that he had definitely inherited his mother's tenacity and his father's intelligence. He started to slow down and came to a stop. Gigi told me to stretches as well to make sure my body stays nimble and doesn't seize up, he thought. Since he had taken his Gigi's advice to take care of his body and that he would not get very far without maintaining a healthy diet and physical fitness, he performed some arm stretches and leg lunges. Upon observing a tall tree, he made the decision to start honing his kunai and shuriken throwing techniques because it was practically a prerequisite for becoming a shinobi. But before he could start practicing his target, he started to feel like someone was nearby. I decided to go look into the source of the signature because it seemed a little familiar. Even though he could sense it was quite strong, the signature felt youthful to him. It took him roughly 5 minutes of walking through the forest to find the person he was seeking. A boy who appeared to be around his age, dressed in a light blue top, gray pants, and shinobi sandals, was standing in a small clearing in the forest. His hair was raven, with a tiny ponytail starting at the back. However, what stood out the most were the prominent, protracted tear troughs beneath his eyes. He had a red and white fan symbol on the back of his shirt. As he observed what the boy was going to do, Naruto, a Uchiha, pondered. He saw 4 kunai materialize in his hands before flipping and leaping into the air. As he started to descend, he let go of the kunai and shot it in the direction of several targets strewn across the tiny clearing. When Naruto saw that they all struck the targets squarely in the middle, his eyes widened. Whoa, he is really good. The youthful Uchiha turned to face Naruto as he landed softly on his feet. Who is there? Come on out, he said softly, but in a somewhat menacing manner. Naruto emerged from his hiding place and moved into the Uchiha boy's line of sight. He said, "My apologies, Uchiha-san," with a slight bow. "I did not mean to spy." I was in the area and I felt your chakra and came to investigate. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. It is nice to meet you, he said while introducing himself. He returned the bow and said, Namikaze-san, it's good to meet you too. My name is Itachi Uchiha. Naruto grinned while nodding. How did you get all the kunai on the bulls? I am surprised someone my age was able to do such a thing. My 2-san and my clan taught me from a very young age, though a lot of it is self-study and a lot of practicing. I just taught myself until I could do it without blinking. So you have been learning to be a ninja since you were young then? When I was 4 I began. Though my Ka-san was not happy about it, but my 2-san talked her into it, saying we Uchiha had to learn at a young age. As Itachi collected his kunai from the targets, Naruto gave a slight nod. The young boy saw Naruto's ninja pouch strapped to his side as he was doing this. With a note of interest in his voice, he inquired, "You are training to be a ninja too?" and observed Naruto nod his head quickly. "Yeah, I have been training since I was 5, but maybe not as much as you have though." Itachi nodded and tucked his kunais back into his tiny pouch, which was on the side of his pants like Naruto's. Naruto wanted to compare himself to someone his own age, so he asked, "What sort of stuff have you learned so far?" In response, Itachi said, "I have studied and practiced the Uchiha style of taijutsu, shuriken jutsu, and fire jutsu, as well as a little bit of genjutsu." He hoped to learn what Naruto had learned and share what he had learned thus far. Naruto thought, "Whoa, he has learned that much already," but he had also been taught that the Uchiha were one of the most powerful families in Konoha, with their strength being on par with that of the Senju clan. As the 2-7-year-olds returned to the middle of the clearing, Itachi said, "May I ask what you have learned since I have told you mine?" "Sure," said Naruto cheerfully. "I have learned 2 chakra control exercises, the leaf and the rock balancing exercises, while I also practice Fuinjutsu. Also my parents tell me I have a sensor ability." Itachi nodded, though he mentioned a sensor ability that intrigued him a little. He inquired, "What is your sensor ability?" However, Naruto shrugged. "I am not too sure. My Chan and Gigi tell me I can just feel people's chakra as well as what they are feeling, like if they are happy or if they are sad or angry. That sounds like a beneficial ability to have. Though who is your Chan? I was unaware that the Hokage and his wife had an older daughter. She is not really by Chan, but I just call her Chan since she is like one and she thinks of me as her little Autouto." He said, "Ah, I apologize for the error," and Naruto waved it away. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Itachi after giving him a close inspection. "You look familiar. Have we met before this?" Itachi gave a headshake. "Perhaps when we were babies, but not since then due to our mother's friendship, rivalry. My mother is Makoto Uchiha," he said, causing Naruto to look surprised. "Makoto Obasan. So that why you look familiar. I think I remember her saying your name before. And you have a little brother, right?" Itachi gave a nod. "My younger brother Sasuke. He is the same age as your siblings Mito and Eiji, I believe." The two sat down in the little clearing and started conversing slowly. Both of them responded with training when asked what their hobbies were, which was not surprising to either of them. However, they soon discovered that the other had a strong desire to defend their village and family, particularly their mothers and siblings. They would both be attending the academy at the same time because they were of the same age. Normally, they would have enrolled at age 6, but one of Minato's first actions as Hokage was to raise the age limit for becoming a shinobi because they were not at war and he wanted the village kids to have more of a childhood before they were involved in the shinobi world's operations. Since Naruto was his mother's favorite before the twins were born, it was obvious to everyone how much he loved her. Since his mother was one of the few people who wanted Itachi to have a typical childhood and would tend to his wounds if he ever overworked himself, Itachi felt a close bond with her. According to Itachi, his father, Fugaku Uchiha, was a highly militarized individual who valued power above all else. Though Itachi always believed it was only to give their clan more power, he made sure Itachi would become the best in the village since he had demonstrated such promise in the ninja arts at such a young age. In the meantime, Naruto explained how he felt so worthless after the Kyuubi after learning that his other was harmed and how he committed to strengthening himself to shield her, his 2-san, and his siblings from any more harm. However, Itachi was taken aback when Naruto revealed that he was the one teaching him Fuinjutsu and that the third Hokage was teaching him how to be a shinobi. Even so, he was aware that the Hokage and his spouse were regarded as the greatest Fuinjutsu practitioners. He questioned why it wasn't being taught. When he inquired, he saw that his new friend had shifted the conversation to something else. Additionally, Naruto watched with slightly wide eyes as Itachi used the fire-style fireball jutsu, which engulfed the area in a massive fireball, in response to his question about whether he could actually perform any elemental ninjutsu because he had heard that it was extremely difficult for someone of their age to accomplish such a feat. After what seemed like several hours of sitting, the sun started to slowly set, and the two boys realized they had better head home before their families became concerned. The two new friends headed home after bidding each other farewell and promising to try to get together again the following day. Nobody would have known at the time that two of Konoha's greatest legends would meet for the first time. Clan Compound Uchiha. After entering the clan compound and taking off his sandals, Itachi entered the kitchen. When he got inside, he saw his mother sitting around the table with Sasuke strapped into his high chair. She was trying to feed him his mushy peas, but judging by the little glare on his face, he didn't seem to want any. Makoto sighed when he said, "No," then grinned and turned to face her oldest. She said, "Hello Itachi. How was your day?" as little Sasuke joyfully gurgled at his big brother upon spotting him. He observed Sasuke attempting to get his attention and remarked, "It was fine Ka-san. I just practiced my shuriken jutsu today," while seated on the opposite side of the table. As Makoto observed the two interacting, he whispered, "Hello Sasuke, are you being a good boy for Ka-san?" Sasuke gurgled, "You I good," which caused Itachi to smile slightly and Makoto to laugh at her youngest son. In response, Sasuke simply swung his arms around. "Now why'd I get the nose while your big brother gets the smile?" she asked. When the 2-year-old boy displayed a look of disgust that suggested he did not want the apricots, he said, "Come on Sasuke. Be good for Ka-san, otherwise you will have to eat the mushy apricots," and he grinned to himself. Makoto made another attempt and pushed the spoon in front of Sasuke's mouth. This time, however, he took a large bite of the food and chewed on it while wearing a scrumptious expression. While feeding her youngest child, Itachi glanced around and noticed that his father, Fugaku, was once again absent. Inquiring as to the whereabouts of his father, he asked, "Where is 2-san Ka-san?" Makoto let out a sigh. She expressed her desire for her husband to spend more time at home by saying, "Your 2-san is at the Uchiha police force station along with Yashira. Apparently they will be pulling an all-nighter again." She thought a little bitterly, but then again when he is home all he does is focus on Itachi, because Fugaku was getting a little fixated on gaining more power for the clan, which regrettably focused on Itachi. Itachi muttered, "I see," as he observed his mother giggling at the amusing faces Sasuke was making and his younger brother contentedly munching on his foot. He said, "I made a friend today," while gazing out the window without noticing his mother's startled expression. "Really?" she inquired, unable to conceal her happiness given that Itachi had no friends outside of the clan. "May I ask who?" He said, "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," and he watched with mild amusement as his mother's face instantly lit up with joy as she clapped her hands together. Ma.ma.
See you guys later.
Sasuke
Thank you
asked,
for
turning his head in
joining this
bewilderment as he
short
watched his
stream.
mother